Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I am Lindy Ruano, and I am with Eastern Sales of Southern California and the Disability Tribe Initiative. Today's webinar, Planning for Community Re-engagement in the Next Phase of Disability Services, is offering ASL and Spanish interpretation. For those in need of Spanish interpretation, please click on the white globe at the bottom of the screen labeled Interpretation. Then click Spanish and you will have the choice to mute original audio. You will then be able to hear Mark Gutierrez provide a live and simultaneous interpretation of the webinar. In the Spanish channel, if you select mute original audio, you will only hear the interpreter. Otherwise, if you don't select mute original audio, you will still be able to hear the English presenters in the background. Our ASL interpreters are Betty and Destiny. They have been spotlighted so they can always be seen throughout the presentation. Depending on your device, this may mean that sometimes you cannot see the presenters. We apologize for the inconvenience, but we want to make sure that this live meeting and recording can be accessible to everyone. This presentation will have closed captioning, which you can access using the button at the bottom of the screen. Next slide, please. A few things to note about Zoom before we get started. This meeting is being recorded to allow us to refer back to the discussion today and the input we receive. You can hear and see us, but we cannot hear and see you. Everyone has been automatically put on mute and your camera is not on. Chat is not activated for attendees. However, presenters will be sharing some information through the chat during the webinar. If you would like to ask a question or provide a comment, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We also ask that you indicate which presenter you would like to send the question to. We have staff monitoring and responding as necessary. Some questions will be answered live at the Q&A at the end, or when we ask you for your email address so that we can follow up with more thorough answers after the webinar. For those of you on a phone or a device, you may not be able to use all of the features we discussed. We will be providing other options for you to access materials or ask questions later in the webinar. Finally, at the end of today's webinar, we will be asking you to participate in our post-event survey. Once the webinar is over, a new window will pop open with the survey. Please provide your feedback so we can improve on future events. It is now my pleasure to introduce Barry Giardini, Executive Director of the California Disability Services Association. Barry?
Thank you so much, Lindy, and good afternoon, everyone. It is our pleasure to present today's latest installment in the Disability Thrive Initiative webinar series on planning for re-engagement of community services. We know that changes are happening through California with regard to COVID-19 restrictions. And as we broach this new world, we certainly want to make sure that we are providing a platform for providers of alternative services in delivering hybrid services, a resumption of in-person services, paying attention to health and safety considerations, et cetera. So we've got a great lineup of presenters today to speak on this topic. We've got two providers who are going to speak to how they're dealing with these challenges in PATHPOINT and Home of Guiding Hands. And we also have a presentation by the Department of Social Services Community Care Licensing Division, which is where we're going to kick off today's program. So it is my pleasure to introduce our presenters from CCL. And today we have Kevin Gaines, the Deputy Director, Claire Matsushita, the Assistant Program Administrator for Adult and Senior Care Program, as well as Kimberly Lewis, an Assistant Program Administrator from Community Care Licensing. Kevin, Claire, and Kim, thank you so much for being with us today. Take it away.
Hi there, Kevin Gaines. As you heard, I'm the Deputy Director for the Community Care Licensing Division for the California Department of Social Services. I want to thank you once again to Barry and others for inviting us to participate in this Disability Thrive Initiative webinar. and we appreciate the focus on planning for community re-engagement. Now, we have a lot to cover, not a lot of time, so I'm going to just hit the high points of what we're going to try and cover and get out of the way. We're going to hit an overview of what's included in our new provider information notices aimed at adult day programs. Claire and Kimberly will tell you which number that is, but it's going to address our support for adult day programs as you all plan for community re-engagement and getting back into the swing of things as the economy reopens. We also want to provide information on COVID-19 vaccinations. If you haven't gotten one yet, we're going to show you how to get one. In addition, we're going to discuss the resumption of our on-site inspections, which we've kind of put on hold since March of 2020. We've been out of the field for a while. We're jumping back in. We want to tell you about that. As always, you and the folks that you're serving and that you're helping, you're on the front lines of this stuff. I mean, we'll come in and we'll white glove test something every now and a blue moon, but you're delivering the real service. So I really want to take this time to acknowledge and thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of the residents and the clients that we all know and love and have in common. So thank you for that. I'm going to get out of your way, and I'm going to turn it over to Claire Matsushita. Again, she's our Assistant Program Administrator for Adult and Senior Programs at CCL. She's going to give you a lot more information. So take it away, Claire.
Thank you, Kevin. And good afternoon, everyone. Like Kevin said, we've got a lot to cover. We've probably only got about, it looks like maybe about 15 minutes to do this. So we're going to speak a little, I may speak a little fast and Kim may also, but hopefully since this is recorded, you can go back and listen and see if you can pick up new information. First of all, like Kevin said, we are going to go back and do on-site visits. Initially, as many of you may know, back in 2019, we developed inspection tools in order to prioritize health and safety in our inspections, support consistent inspection practices, and develop actionable information. What we found is that we needed some specific inspection tools to be able to accomplish all of that. We developed them, started training our staff, and unfortunately, can I go to the next slide, please? And unfortunately, I don't have to tell all of you, because you all experienced probably to the same extent or maybe more than we at CCL did. In March of 2020, Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency, which granted the department the authority to waive provisions from the Health and Safety or Welfare and Institutions Code as deemed necessary in order to respond to the COVID-19 virus. We at CCL use that flexibility to suspend annual inspections. This allowed us to focus on strategies to fight the spread of COVID-19, which was basically what we were doing, is providing technical assistant tele-inspections to our residential facilities. And if any of the adult day programs were operating, we provided that technical assistance about mitigation, containment, how to stop the spread. Next slide, please. And at this point, I think it's Kim's turn. She's going to talk about the resumption of on-site inspections.
Thank you, Claire, and good afternoon, everyone. So throughout the pandemic, we at Community Care Licensing Division have been providing licensees with the tools and equipment they need to mitigate and contain COVID-19. We have held 19 monthly informational calls, and I hope that you've had the opportunity to attend those calls. In addition, we've issued multiple provider information notices. The regional offices also held town hall meetings in their offices to really do a local level review with licensees of any issues that they were having in their specific areas. And also, as Claire mentioned, the LPAs have been conducting televisits throughout this time with their licensees to ensure that they had everything that they needed. So during that time, we also continued to do our highest priority health and safety inspections, those being our complaints, priority 1 and 2 complaints, as well as any time that we had some licensee needs in facilities to deal with COVID-19. We've gone out with local public health and we've helped to address those areas. But now, as has been mentioned, we are beginning we already began on May 10th to resume in-person annual inspections. So the annual inspections are the ones that we delayed because of COVID-19. And it was just so that we could focus on these other activities to really help our licensees. Now, as we move forward, the goal of the new inspections will be to ensure adherence to the guidance and also infection control measures. So we're going to be working with licensees to make sure that their mitigation plans are strong. And our goal, again, LPAs will continue to provide technical assistance and helping licensees to comply. So next slide, please. The LPAs they'll be using the infection control domain. And like Claire had mentioned, we started a new inspection tool process prior to COVID-19. And so now we've added in there an infection control domain, and that will be the domain that we start with as we're starting our annual inspections. And a copy of our tool can be found on the website. And as well, I will send a copy of the link to the person controlling the chat box so that they can provide that to you. And the focus of these inspections, again, as I mentioned, it will be to assess strategies that facilities are employing to contain and mitigate COVID-19. The tool really looks at the areas of the mitigation plan, personal protective equipment, staff training, personal rights, isolation and quarantine, and cohorting. So all of those areas that are part of the mitigation plan, those are the areas the LPAs will be reviewing and assisting with. Not to leave out, though, that even though our focus will be on infection control, we will also be, if there are any health and safety matters, we will be addressing those as well. So it's not solely focused on the inspection control, but we can also look at health and safety matters. Okay, next slide, please. Okay. So we do understand that licensees, staff, and residents may have concerns about people that are coming into the facility and wanting to make sure that they are safe themselves and not transmitting COVID into the facility. So with that, the department has really taken this very seriously. We've heard the concerns, we understand. Our analysts will be taking weekly COVID-19 tests themselves, just like your facility staff do. They're going to submit those test results to the department and will go out in the field as long as their test result is negative, as well as they'll be completing a daily symptom self-assessment just to make sure they're not displaying any symptoms. They're also going to be, as they have the donning and doffing of PPE, they'll have that training as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so 3 steps to the inspection process. Our first stage, perform facility reviews. So this is where the LPA is going to be making sure that they're looking at the mitigation plan for the facility. And as we've already talked about, there's very specific areas that are to be addressed in that mitigation plan to include screening, testing, quarantine, isolation, cohorting, and just also want to offer that we understand the mitigation plan is new and it's asking for a lot of information, and we do have resources to help licensees if they need assistance with preparing that mitigation plan. If that is the case for you, please reach out to your local regional office and request that assistance. Okay, and next slide, please. So you may have heard me talk about the risk assessment call, and the purpose of the risk assessment questions is for the LPA to contact the licensee or the administrator of the facility and to determine the level of PPE that they're going to need at the facility. So these calls will be made on the same day of the inspection, and they're going to include asking the following. They're going to ask if in the last 10 days, anyone who is regularly present in the facility has tested positive for COVID-19, has been exposed to someone who tested positive for COVID-19, or been diagnosed with a respiratory infection. And they'll also be asking if there's been any specific symptoms. So just that's one thing to know, that we are going to be asking those questions on the day of the inspection. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, step 2, conducting the inspection. So just like any inspections that you've had in the past, we will be doing our physical walkthrough of the facility just to, look for anything that is in your mitigation plan or should be there, and assisting you with making sure to put certain things in place. And then also looking at any health and safety risks as well. And we will, again, we'll be reviewing the files prior to the inspection, and just making sure that your plan of operation and what's occurring in the facility is current with that. Next slide, please. Okay, and concluding the inspection, again, this is the same as we've done in the past. We will always conduct an exit interview with the licensee or the administrator, and our goal, again, is to provide assistance. We know that this COVID-19 and the mitigation plans, it's new for everybody. And so we'll be providing technical assistance and doing what we can to help the licensee. There may be cases, again, like we've indicated, where there are health and safety concerns, and there may need to be citations in those cases. So just want to bring that to your attention. Okay, and then next slide, please. So again, also just to remind you that our LPAs will be coming out to the facility, and they will be doing things to make sure that they protect your facility from any infectious diseases. They'll be following your screening practices. So anything that you're checking of your people that are coming into your facility, that would be the LPA as well. They will be practicing social distancing and wearing appropriate PPE. They may also request an area that supports infection control so that they can keep their equipment out of areas that might have infectious diseases. And of course, they'll be following any guidance from local and state public health officials. So just to be clear, our goal here is to come in and assist, and we do understand the concerns, so we are addressing those concerns through this way. And so now with that, next slide, please, and I'm going to turn it back to Claire Matsushita.
Thank you, Kimberly. I'm going to talk about a couple of the pins. One is pin 2121 ASC that was released on April the 15th of 2021, that really speaks to guidance and support for operating adult day programs during COVID-19. And this pin should be used in conjunction with pin 2033 ASC, which really talks about the guidance in terms of more the mitigation and containment plan. Just want to point out, though, is that we at CCL did not issue any guidance prohibiting adult day programs from remaining open during the COVID-19 pandemic. But I know the majority of the licensees or day programs did close down for a number of reasons, and most of it for the safety of their staff and their participants. Now that as this webinar really is, the focus on is re-engagement, reopening of the day programs. And I just want to take a moment right now to say that I am so pleased to be able to participate in a webinar with two licensees and to hear what steps they've taken in order to reopen in a very thoughtful way that was very inclusive in terms of obtaining the participants' decision, their family, and in a way reimagining how an adult day program operates. Next slide, please. As part of that reopening, and I think based on a lot of the comments that I've heard and some of the things that I've seen from the two providers, you've already taken this into consideration. But just want to point out, no mitigation practice is 100% effective. That's why we're recommending, and it should be on your mitigation plan, all of the following: the daily symptom screenings, facility and staffing alterations, which includes things like, how you set up your groups, how people, staff are assigned to different groups. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Routine COVID testing. I already saw probably a half a dozen questions in the question and answer about COVID testing. And I'm going to be upfront. Yes, when the PIN came out about testing, it didn't specifically call out adult day programs, but best practices, and 25% of your staff should be tested on a weekly basis until all 100% are tested by the end of the month. Now, there was a question about fully vaccinated individuals, whether or not they should continue the testing. We are still upholding that guidelines, but we are also working with California Department of Public Health and looking at the CDC guidelines to determine at what point we will change that cadence in terms of testing. So I would say stay tuned, check our website. There should be something coming up pretty soon about changing that testing guideline. And we are looking further on issuing a new PIN that specifically speaks to the adult day programs. Other prevention measures include the hand washing, the postage, and or signage, and I'll speak to that a little bit further, and vaccinations. Next slide, please. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about what the mitigation practices include. Daily symptom screenings, which includes screening folks when they come in, temperature checks, asking for symptoms. We all have become used to this. With pretty much any place we go, we're being asked those questions. Don't allow any client, participant, visitor, staff who shows up with COVID-19 symptoms. If a person came into contact with someone diagnosed with COVID-19, this is where the vaccinations are really important. If they're fully vaccinated, they don't need to quarantine. They don't need to get tested. Not fully vaccinated, they should not be attending your services at the day program until after their quarantine has ended. Next slide, please. Facility and staffing changes. These are the alterations we're talking about. Reducing capacity to allow for social distancing, or staggering the times, having one group start in the morning and one group in the afternoon. And I know all of the day programs are already trying to figure out what the best method is to remain operational, yet provide those services. So, and it includes divide participants in cohorts. Again, many of the day programs have always done this to a certain extent, because you find that maybe one direct care staff works much better with these groups of individuals as opposed to another group. Next slide, please. Having that hand sanitizer and or soap and water available throughout the day program. Yes, understanding that you may have participants who will put the hand sanitizer or the soap in their mouth. So it's always taking those precautions about how do you make it available, yet not endanger the health and safety of the residents. Disinfect frequently touched surfaces and equipment. I think this is essential. While there has been some changes in terms of the guidance about how often to touch surface, to clean surfaces and equipment, recognizing that many of your participants will be moving from one area to another and may not frequently wash their hands as we would expect or want them to use. Wearing face coverings. Again, this is in our guidance, we've talked about how if they have certain difficulties in terms of wearing the mask because of health reasons or just because of the behaviors, there is guidance on alternate ways of wearing some kind of face coverings. Next slide, please. All right. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about vaccines, and this is one of my favorite slides that really talks about, you've heard so much about herd immunity, and this visual gives you a really great picture of why that is so important. The individual who is in red, individuals in red are the contagious individuals. The blues are susceptible to COVID. But as you see, if the more people that are immunized, sorry, they can protect those individuals that are susceptible to COVID-19. Next slide, please. Vaccine keys. I think it's really important as you message out to develop a plan to get vaccinated. And this plan, and I recognize a lot of your day programs have been doing this, Easter seals, and it looks like a PATHPOINT may also have hosted clinics to get their families and get, as well as the participants, to get the vaccines. The vaccines are safe and effective. They are available to all Californians for free. And the important part about the vaccine is equity is a North Star guiding the vaccine program. So we've got to be equitable. At this point, what I understand, which is great news, is that on Tuesday, starting the 24th, I understand Uber and Lyft will provide free rides to anyone to a vaccine site. And that is free between May the 24th and July the 4th. So you should be listening to some of the news reports about how you can access that service. Next slide, please. Okay. While vaccines are important, please understand you can't require participants as a reason to participate in the day program. So they can attend the day program without having vaccine. You can't cohort. I think there's been questions whether you can cohort the non-vaccinated people in one particular group. What's really important is that when you group, it has to really be based on their behaviors, on their needs, on their wishes. So those are the most important things to determine about cohorting. There is no mandate from the department for licensees, volunteers, and facility staff to be vaccinated. Again, strongly encourage them, help them understand, listen to them about why they don't want the vaccine, and figure out ways to encourage them. And even if folks are vaccinated, everyone should continue to wear masks, wash hands frequently, practice social distancing, participate in any and all activities. And this gets back to, again, the herd immunity and trying to protect everyone. And so that we can get back to a semi-normal life as it was. Okay, finally, I know I'm probably running out of time. Real quickly, the next slide, please. Just want to point out, and you can look this up, pin 21 05 ASC, which was issued January the 21st. Some new statutory requirements, the two biggest one for day programs, maintaining an email address on record with the department, and requiring adult day programs to have an emergency disaster plan. And if you look at the pin, it'll explain what needs to be included. Next slide. And here are some resources to look up in terms of if you need additional information on COVID-19. And now, next slide, please. I'm going to hand it over to Karen Moore from PATHPOINT for her presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire, for the introduction, and thank you, Kevin, Claire, and Kimberly for the informative presentation. I'm very happy to be talking today about the services provided by PATHPOINT during COVID and how we are preparing for re-engagement. I'm going to give a brief overview of who we are as an agency, how we are providing support since COVID, and ways we are preparing for reopening our day services. Next slide, please. PATHPOINT provides services to almost 3,000 individuals in 5 counties, including the cities of Paso Robles in the north, Bakersfield in the east, and Long Beach in the southern Los Angeles County area. Our services range from employment, helping people secure jobs and providing job coaching, supporting people in their homes with independent living services, and providing community integration services and supports in our day supports. Next slide, please. For our day services pre-COVID, most people came to one of our facilities and then accessed the community with support from staff or participated in activities of their choices at the site. Next slide, please. Since COVID, our day services look very different. A person-centered approach is used when deciding what alternative services a person wants. This is a quick overview of the options a person can choose for services now and going forward. The individual receiving services and their circle of support let us know what activities the individual wants, such as in-home supports, accessing the community for walks, practicing wearing masks and physical distancing. The person may want remote learning opportunities via Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and FaceTime, and connecting either individually or in small groups. We send home weekly packets and have follow-ups with the individuals through group meetings, classes, or individually with personal phone calls. The material in the packet usually includes items for video classes or even cooking supplies for a follow-along cooking demonstration. Others might need us to deliver personal protective equipment or PPE to them and their family, or get assistance with shopping or transportation. Most people utilize several different types of alternative services each day. Other supports PATHPOINT provided during COVID included sending staff to various group homes to provide day services in the home and assist with staffing needs. We provided 24/7 search support when individuals were diagnosed with COVID and could not be supported in their group homes. We also continued to provide independent living services and employment services in the traditional manner. Many of the people we support had jobs in essential services and chose to continue working. Next slide, please. How we determine what services a person wants to engage in now and as we slowly reopen is through person-centered planning. What we have learned with remote sessions is that some people thrived with alternative services. One family told us their son is communicating more since logging into remote sessions. For people we support who are medically fragile, having a choice of in-person and remote services is an added bonus. We are continuing to ask the people we support what is working with alternative services and what isn't going as well. In the pictures on this slide, one person is working on his art during the pandemic. He wanted to continue with support with his artwork and received instruction in both remote classes and in-person training. The other person we support is an independent living who likes making meals for himself ahead of time. Once we are fully open with our services, people will have a variety of support services to choose from. At PathPoint, we've been asking people what they want to do when they re-engage in person. Do they want to return to in-person supports at our facilities? Would they rather continue with remote sessions off-site or have one-on-one in their home? Do they want a combination of both hybrid and remote at the facility? We also use a decision-making profile to support people in making their choices. I'll go into more detail on the decision-making profile in a later slide. Next slide, please. But first, I want to introduce you to Dominique, or Dom, as she likes to be called. Dom is a person we support and was part of a pilot program for a grant we received for assistive technology. PathPoint received a grant from DDS through Tri-Counties Regional Center and Kern Regional Center before COVID hit on addressing the technology needs of people we support. We continued the project through COVID. Recently, we interviewed Dom about her choice of returning to in-person for services at our site in Bakersfield or remaining with alternative services. Let's listen to what Dom had to say.
Dom, when asked if you want to return to in-person services, you stated that you want to continue with remote services. What do you like about remote services?
What I like about remote services is that you get to communicate with other people and start a program if I don't want to go to program yet, because I think I'm not ready at the beginning, but in the future I will.
How has technology and the Assistive Technology Resource Guide supported you with remote services?
Well, it made me communicate better, and it made my Java skills better, and I like how they picked me, because before I didn't have I was bored, didn't have nothing to do.
Given the option, once we fully open our services, will you want to continue with remote services?
If it's fully open, I would consider it, and I'm not thinking of that right now.
And in the future, would you want to have a mixture of some days in person, meeting at the facility, and some days remote?
I would like to mix it, so I won't be at home all the time. And I like the remote on our services better. I would like to say thank you and for doing all of this and putting the hard work in it. That's it. Bye.
Next slide. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Dom. Before COVID, Dom was working on technology at the program site for communication. Once COVID hit and in-person services shut down, we used the tools in the Assistive Technology Guide to reassess her needs and amend her goals. It was during this process we discovered her dream of becoming a graphic artist. This slide shows a brief overview of the Assistive Technology Guide Dom referred to in her interview. We use person-centered planning tools along with technology assessments to determine what technology was the best fit for Dom. The guide helps us learn the different environments that a person will be using the technology in and the best technology supports for the person. The idea is to not only use the technology at a program site, but at home and as we reopen the state in the community too. You can find the guide on our website by going through the And by going through the process with Dom, we were able to discover a dream she had that we were not aware of, and why that was becoming a graphic artist. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the decision-making profile to support people in making informed choices. It's important to know the best way to support a person when making a decision. Key points for the decision-making profile are knowing the best time of day to talk to a person, and also to avoid approaching a person at the worst time of day. How a person likes to receive information, and ways we can help people understand. By learning these critical points, we can support a person in making a decision. More information on the decision-making profile can be found in the Assistive Technology Resource Guide or going to the Helen Sanderson Associates website. Using the decision-making profile helped us understand the best time of day to talk to a person and the worst time to avoid, and how a person wants the information given to them to talk about choices for re-engagement. Once we knew how a person wanted to receive information, the questions we asked people about returning to our facilities included, do you want to return to the building for in-person services? If not, do you want only alternative services? If returning to the facility, do you want to access the community? Do you want to come back but not enter the building and only be in the community? If accessing the community, what places are you willing to go? Are you okay with visiting facilities in the community, such as the library or stores? Or do you only want to be outside in the community, such as parks, and attend outdoor events? Do you have a preference what days of the week you want to return? If we have 2 daily sessions, do you want a 3-hour morning or afternoon session? Do you want a mixture of services, some remote and some in person? Next slide, please. In order to prepare our facilities for reopening, the first thing we are doing is addressing the air filtration system. For facilities we own, we are upgrading our HVAC systems with ionized filters for air intakes and circulation, and checking with owners of buildings we rent to see if they are doing the same. If the owners are not upgrading their HVAC systems, we are purchasing portable air filtration systems for those locations. If needed, we are looking into dividers and barriers for our activity rooms and shade structures to utilize more outdoor spaces. We are marking off 6 feet between tables or where people will be located in their wheelchairs to keep physical distancing. We have a safe operations guide that we have used throughout the pandemic as a reference for staff. We are asking staff for voluntary vaccinations and enhanced PPE if not fully vaccinated. There's a decision-making tree in the guide that helps staff know when to wear what PPE, and we are sharing a copy of the Safe Operations Guide that other vendors may find useful on the Thrive website. We are also making sure that we are following the mitigation plans that CCL mentioned earlier, and that have also been approved by Community Care Licensing. For our soft reopening, we are continuing to offer alternative services and all those services I described earlier, and only bringing back a few people at a time to make sure our facility precautions are working, and we are slowly bringing in more people. Decisions on who to bring in and who to bring back depend on personal choice of the person served, the approval of the regional center and the person's support team, and how much they are currently engaging in alternative services. We want the people with the greatest need for interaction to come back first. After we successfully bring back a few people, we will add more by going through the same process. Currently and throughout the pandemic, we practiced wearing masks with the people we support in our remote sessions, and we practice wearing masks and physical distancing with people during community walks to help them prepare to wear masks as tolerated and understand physical distancing upon returning. Next slide, please. This is a picture of people at our facility in Bakersfield where we have already begun a soft reopening. Everyone is at least 6 feet apart and they are all wearing masks. Everyone has their own supplies for the day and do not share supplies with each other. A total of 9 people are returning for a soft reopening, 4 people on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and 5 other people on Tuesdays and Thursdays. They are in the service for 3 hours at a time. In a couple weeks, staff will review how things are going and make a plan to have more people attend. In Kern County, we have to submit the names of the people who want to return to the regional center, who will follow up with the people about their choice and arrange for transportation if needed. We also had to submit the mitigation plans approved and signed by the LPA. If you haven't done so already, reach out to your regional center to find out the procedure for reopening your site or re-engaging in community services. At all our sites, we are following our mitigation plans that were approved by CCO and checking daily to see if any guidance from the county, state, or CDC have been updated to make sure we are following the safest protocols. And at that time, we always update our safe operations guide. As we are slowly re-engaging at our facilities, we continue to offer alternative services. Next slide, please. Please put any questions you may have into the Q&A. You can also reach out to me personally via my email. The Assistive Technology Resource Guide is available on PATHPOINT's website and can be used by individuals receiving services, families, and other providers. And the Safe Operation Guide can be used by other providers. It includes decision trees on exposure, wearing PPE, latest travel advisories, etc. Thank you for this opportunity to speak today. Dom will be joining us for the Q&A. I'd like to take this time to introduce our next speaker, Edward Hershey, COO of Home of Guiding Hands. Edward?
Thank you for that introduction, Karen. As Karen mentioned, my name is Edward Hershey and I'm the COO for Home of Guiding Hands. In addition to that, I'm a parent of a young woman that receives services from the San Diego Regional Center. Next slide. For those of you that are not familiar with Home of Guiding Hands, or HGH, we are one of the largest programs and service providers in San Diego County. We serve more than 4,000 infants, adolescents, and adults in San Diego and Imperial Valley. We offer a continuum of services for all ages, including early childhood development, residential services for all ages, in-home respite, community living program, Taylor Day services, and transportation. Next slide. Before I start talking about re-engagement, I wanted to kind of back up and talk a little bit about how we got here, because I feel that's important. So like many vendors, March 13th, 14 months ago, we stopped everything. We stopped our transportation, we stopped our residents from going to day program, stopped our Taylor Day, our IDA assessments, everything just froze. And we shifted into kind of a Mazark hierarchy, just concerned about our needs. So we looked at, how are we going to make sure that our residents are provided for, cared for? How are we going to prevent them from getting COVID? How are we going to get food into the houses without having to do the shopping? And that was our focus during the beginning. And in San Diego, the vendor community really rallied. We created a kind of co-op. A lot of the day programs provided resources that they had and weren't using because their day centers were closed. So stored up toilet paper that wasn't being used and various supplies for other vendors that needed those and couldn't get those. About a month into it, we needed to shift our mindset to the new norm. And looking back at it, I kind of laugh because we all thought this was only going to last 30 days, then maybe 60 days. But this became our new norm. So we had to look for alternative services. We looked at what the needs were. We identified solutions to them. We wanted to know how we could add value to our consumers, to our community, and to the industry. And we also looked at what resources we had. So we had empty buildings, a fleet of vehicles for our transportation, and a lot of drivers. And then we thought back to our mission. What was our mission? At HGH, our mission is to improve the lives of those we served. And that's what we focused on. And how could we add that service, or how could we serve the people? And it really created this culture of change and creativity. We came up with so many different ideas for alternative service. We'd sit around, and I'm not going to tell you that they were all successful. I have a robot in my office that my CFO keeps pointing to that I thought was going to be a great program. And that didn't work out. But we did have many great alternative services that we implemented. Next slide. So a number of the alternative services that we provided was, we had, as I mentioned, a lot of a fleet of buses, 16 passenger buses. So we started setting up transportation for PPE from Fairview down to San Diego out to Imperial Valley. We started working on distribution of PPE to vendors and consumers and families. And to date, we've delivered more than 10 million pieces of PPE product in Southern California. We also partnered with San Diego Regional Center and started COVID testing quickly. We did quick response teams for houses that had concerns. We could take a mobile unit there and test and get the results within 24 to 48 hours. We hosted drive-through events at some of our empty office locations. After that, we shifted into vaccine clinic. And in fact, we were up at Terry in Oceanside today doing another vaccine clinic and have done more than 1,200 consumers, families, staff, and gotten vaccines done for them. Transportation, as things started reopening a little bit, we got creative with our transportation, even if it was just an outing for a family, or we even took groups to the drive-in and just in a large bus, kind of like an RV, parked in the back, and got people out of the house a little bit. Like many other organizations, we did video meetings, engagement with consumers, tried to do, bingo night, cooking classes online. Another thing we did where we started looking at the needs and how could we meet those needs. As we were out in Imperial Valley, we found a lot of places that didn't have Wi-Fi. So we got portable Wi-Fi unit that we could go and create a hotspot while we were offering other services there, and people could connect and get connected with resources. We also created engagement material. We had a device library early on for people to get computers, Chromebooks, Wi-Fi pucks to be able to connect with their day programs. One of the things we're really excited about, and this is part of that creativity I talked about, was we developed a mobile IDA assessment. So you see the picture in front of you is actually one of our 16 passenger buses. We removed the seats, put in a little play area, kind of like a little office area, and now are able to offer IDA assessments in the community. So the vehicle can go to other locations, it can meet in central locations, be cleaned in between each use. And it's something that we think is going to be useful for us even out once we re-engage and leave COVID. Next slide, please. So that brings us to re-engagement. And the stopping part was easy. It's a starting back up that is a bit more challenging. And I wrote this slide about a week ago, and I was reviewing it this morning, and I'm actually changing it because I don't like the word challenging, and I think we use that too often. And I want to switch that to opportunity. And my intention on this slide was to go over some of the challenges that we're facing as we re-engage, but I really want to put that different lens on it and look at it as opportunities that we have. So there's definitely a desire to go back, right, for some normalcy. People want to get back to their day program, get back connected. We're also seeing that there's an option for different schedules. No longer is it the 8 to 2 Monday through Friday. And we can look at morning, evening, weekends. There's a lot of opportunities to flex the schedule there. Transportation requests, originally they were coming in, and I was trying to find ways of how can we make these one-offs work. So we'd get a request for someone for transportation need on Monday and Wednesday from 8 to 11, which is not what we normally did, but having to shift that mindset of how can we make that work? Even if we have to look at do we have the right resources? Maybe our 16 passenger buses are not what we currently need. Maybe we need to look at small Sprinter vehicles to meet this new need. And then most importantly, and as Karen from PATHPOINT did, talk about the person-centered. What do the consumers want? And we got a lot of different responses with that. So next slide, please. So I want to tell you about a couple of the people we spoke with, and it kind of gives you an overview of what we're seeing. So the first one is Megan. I want to tell you about Megan. She's 34 years old, lives in a group home and attends a day program pre-COVID. And she consistently had what we wrongly classified as behaviors. Going to day program, leaving day programs. She would decide she was going to sit down and not get up, not get on that bus, or not leave the day program, or not go to the day program. And we kept classifying that as a behavior. And in actuality, Megan was communicating with us and we just weren't listening, and she was getting frustrated. So now Megan is at home with alternative services, connects via video with her day program, and she's thriving. And no longer is she frustrated on having to repeat herself to us every day. Julia, the next story. Julia is 26 years old. She moved out for the first time from her parents December, in the middle of this COVID. She moved out on her own with some supportive care, but she misses her day program. She misses that in-person interaction. And I'm gonna let Julia tell you in her own words what she's looking for. Please play the video.
Hi, my name is Juliet, and I receive services from the San Diego Regional Center. I'm a part of a program where we have different volunteer jobs, such as Walmart, libraries, bowling alleys, and all kinds of other places around San Diego. And I have been looking for other things to do during this pandemic. I have received services through staff members of my program. There are 2 staff members I have, and they can't really take me out, so I've been looking at other things around the San Diego area. I am looking for not necessarily a day program, but something that can help me get out in the community more, something that I think would help me out, give me education, and I think something that would help me in doing better things. And living independently has shown me a lot of that too. However, I find that sometimes I get bored, so I would like something that is calming, fun, and exciting, and that also offers me more time to be with other staff members. If there is any possibility out there, please, please, please let there be an opportunity out there. Okay.
So Julia wants to know what other options are out there for her to thrive. Last story I have for you is Kenneth. Kenneth is 82, and pre-COVID, he would always question why he has to go to day program each day. Now, God willing, when I'm 82, I hope to be retired, and my day will consist of getting up whenever I want and deciding if I'm going to engage with people or if I'm just going to stay in my pajamas all day long. With alternative service, this has given Kenneth an opportunity to thrive, and he will continue to thrive as he's able to work alternative services and not a traditional day program. Next slide. So this brings us to now, and how we've been successful ramping up some of our programs as well, and what worked. And I'm hoping that we can kind of learn from this micro environment. So I use this analogy with my staff a lot about rowing. So think about rowing a canoe or a raft or anything. And unfortunately, we as vendors are very fragmented right now, right? We have residential programs, we have transportation programs, and we have day programs, employment programs, but we're each trying to start up without communicating with each other. So we might get residential programs saying, my people aren't ready to go back to program yet. We might have day programs saying, I'm starting up now, and transportation saying, oh, wait, we don't have the vehicles, or how are we going to maintain social distancing? We don't have the right equipment. And everyone's not rowing together. So we each have one person rowing, getting frustrated with the other group, where we all just need to be in sync, rowing at the same time. In HGH, we have kind of this micro environment. So we do have a residential program component, transportation, and a day program. So what has worked on that micro level is, as Karen described, readiness assessments, person-centered communication, talking with the consumer. What do they want? What are they looking for? And Karen did an excellent job outlining those steps and providing resources for that. The other part is communicating with those three entities I talked about. We really need to be sitting together and starting this industry that we stopped on a dime. We need to be starting it up together by rowing together. And that comes with communication. And then looking at the resources. We might need to change some of the resources we have. I talked about our buses, our 16 passenger buses. We might not return to that 24 vehicle fleet we had. We might be looking at what fits the need, and do we need some sprinters and a handful of the large buses. There's going to be training involved, training with consumers. One of the ones we're working with now is somebody going back to day program that took public transportation, and we're looking at how public transportation has changed and how we can support them with some training around that. And then ongoing feedback. Again, the three groups need to be communicating with each other, what's working, what's not working, and how we can adjust it on the fly. I constantly use the example with my team of making calls on the football field, right? We're in the middle of a play, we see an obstacle, and we change our play then and what we're going to do. This brings me to consumer focused and solution focused. So we need to be consumer focused. What do our consumers want in order to thrive? We need to be solution focused. We need to shift our mindset from challenges, like I talked about earlier, to the opportunities that we have, and how can we think outside the box. I think Claire said it great early on in our presentation when she said she's looking forward to how we reimagine how our programs operate. And that is the opportunity that we have in front of us. We need to embrace change. This weekend, I was spring cleaning, not by my choice. But as we were cleaning, my youngest son was cleaning the movies, where we store our movies, and came across a Blockbuster cover and asked what that was. And so for those of you that don't know, that might be too young to remember Blockbuster, they opened in 1985. And in 2 decades, they became the top movie rental business in the US. So for your younger generation, we used to have to go to this store, pick our movies, then we'd go to a movie or a pizza place next door, take it home, and that's what we did on a Friday night. Now in 2010, the company filed for bankruptcy and closed. Now, why did they end up closing? They didn't embrace change. A company called Netflix came along and told them that they had this idea about not going to a brick and mortar store, but going to getting your movies over the mail and then eventually streaming it. And Blockbuster said, no, people aren't going to ever want that. They're not going to do that. Why do we need to change? And they ended up going bankrupt. We also need to challenge the norm. Challenging the norm is about changing our mindset. We we have this great opportunity here to redesign our services, and let's not waste this opportunity. With that, I want to thank you for your time. Now leading us in questions and answer sessions, I would like to introduce Will Stanford from California Disabilities Service Association.
Thank you, Edward. This is one of those amazing times where we've had great presentations. So Q&A is going to be really microscopic. So I was going to ask if we're going to have Claire and Karen, Edward and Dom all come back on, and Kim if she wants to. Because we're going to have to do the round robin speed question to stay inside of this. So I have one for each of you. And I don't see Claire yet. Oh, there she comes on. So Claire, one thing that came up was, how does licensing's world impact those day or employment services that are primarily community-based? Yes, they don't have a facility, so they're not licensed, but they probably support people who are coming from a licensed residential facility. So how does that interaction work?
If I understand the question, Will, the community-based programs that are not licensed, our regulations, our guidance don't apply to them. But I would point out that a lot of what we're recommending would be really useful as they reopen up. And then, of course, all of our licensed facilities, the residential facilities, will be following the guidance for testing, for encouraging vaccinations, mitigation plans, those kind of things. So hopefully, will I answer the question or worked around it?
You worked around a little bit, but I think it sort of goes to Edward's comment on the communication, that those services that are re-engaging the community fully, and that's where they were a year ago, are still going to have to understand the rules of the road for residential that lives in that licensed space. One thing for Karen, how have you trained your staff in using the decision-making profiles, or that model of doing it? Have you really trained your staff to do that?
There is some training on Helen Sanderson's website, and we've gone through the decision-making profile with staff that way. They've also been trained in person-centered planning, which helps them get a good foundation for asking these types of questions.
So just want to making sure that that's got to be a part of the staff training for direct service professionals. And then go back to Edward real quick. So obviously in your micro environment, you have residential. How have you communicated with residential that's not under your control? How have you sort of tried to build those bridges, get us out of the silos?
That's a great question. That's a work in progress, and I don't think we're there yet. I know personally at HGH, we're doing that person-centered assessment we talked about, and gathering the information and scheduling those meetings with the silos, the other groups, the day programs, the other transportation programs, and having an old-fashioned sit down and let's come up with the solution together.
Awesome. Yeah, because I think that's really one of the messages we were trying to sort of encapsulate in this was, making sure the communication really is happening. So Dom, I'm going to give you the final say here because you're always the rock star. I didn't get to see any of your artwork. I'm a little bummed, but how have you felt and supported in making the choice to want to maybe stay at home while things are re-engaged in the community? Have you felt supported in that process?
I felt well supported in that process from my staff right here to my mom and my dad and everybody.
So everybody was supportive of that. And you sort of talked about right now you're not ready to choose to necessarily go back, but how will you feel at some point when you can choose, you make that choice, I do want to go back? What will that look like for you?
Well, that was how would I say it's the most?
Will you want to go back full-time or will you want to go back part-time?
I would want to go back part-time.
Would you want remote services as well, or?
I would want remote services as well.
Okay, and I guess the other question I have is, people taught, I think Edward mentioned that, traditionally day services were 9 to 3. Is that when you'd want to be able to go back to services, or would you want them to think about doing it at different times?
Thinking about doing it at different times, and that's a long time.
Yes, it's one of those things we have. It's a holdover from all those old times. So again, I would like to really thank all the panelists, and clearly there was incredible. We had over almost 50 questions come in from the chat. We'll try and get to those that we can. I'm going to turn it back over to Barry Giardini to wrap us up.
Thank you, Will, and I want to thank all of our presenters today for sharing your experience, your expertise, and your knowledge on the re-engagement process. It was quite clear from the level of interest and questions that we received today that this is a topic that is going to continue to deserve continued focus. We know that the world is still changing and there are a lot of questions. So we're hopeful that you can keep some of that conversation going with us as early as this Friday in our Lunch and Learn session, which will be Friday, May 14th. From noon to 1 o'clock. It's an opportunity for us to have a little bit of more of an interactive session and answer some of the questions that you have about this re-engagement world. And so that's a great opportunity, but we will certainly do our best to get information out. I noticed that there were certainly a lot of questions around new policy and things like that. While the Disability Thrive initiative doesn't speak specifically to policy, we can certainly educate folks and share resources as they come out from DDS or community care licensing. You can also access our resource library with today's materials and the webinar presentation at our website, disabilitythriveinitiative.org. We will also put any external resources on that page that are relevant to this conversation. And of course, you can always email for updates about the latest at signup.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Next slide, please. I just want to have a reminder as well to everyone with us today that we do offer through the Disability Thrive Initiative our Services Support Center, which is free one-on-one or group assistance with accessing or delivering alternative services, including supports to family members, individuals with disabilities, or service providers who are trying to figure out this new and changing landscape as we kind of figure out how to do hybrid and utilize alternative services as we protect, again, the health and safety of individuals with disabilities. We do provide direct support or we can connect you with a consultant to speak to your question. Any of those requests can be made through support.disabilitythriveinitiative.org, or just go to our website and you'll see a link to submit a ticket for consultation. So just know that that's a free resource that we offer to everyone through the Disability Thrive Initiative. And finally, just want to put in a plug for our next webinar, which will be on May 26th at 3 o'clock, focusing on strengthening mental health through empathy and understanding. We know that COVID-19 has been a long process and has certainly taken its toll on a lot of folks in their mental health. And we are going to be focusing on that during the presentation. So we'll hope you will join us there. We're grateful that you were with us today. Again, big thanks to Community Care Licensing, PATHPOINT, and HGH for your presentations today. Everything is on our website, disabilitythriveinitiative.org. And again, thank you all for being here with us today. We look forward to interacting with you soon. Thanks so much.